Hey guys, this is a very quick review video of the 4 different ways you can solve quadratic equations. So I have a whole series on how to solve quadratics, but sometimes it can be a little bit dizzying or you forget some of the details. So this is a quick video just to show you the 4 ways you can do it. If these don't make sense to you, then I'd highly recommend going to some of the other videos I have where I go into a lot more details on this. So this is a very strict kind of way I want you to use this. So before I get started, just consider supporting my channel by liking this video, leaving me a comment, or subscribing to my channel. I'm trying to make as much free math help for all on the internet, and your support really helps. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to solve this problem here, x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 0. We're going to talk about how to solve this a couple different ways using all the different techniques that are available. So the first technique that we have for solving quadratics is by factoring. So not all problems can be factored, but this one can. And if you can factor, that tends to be your best way to kind of do something. So this factors as x plus 5 times x plus 1. So you factor it like that, and then you just take each factor and set it equal to 0. So I'd have x plus 5, I'd set that factor equal to 0, and then I'd have x plus 1 and set that factor equal to 0. And then if you had to, if you can't tell what the answer would be just by looking at it, you can just solve each one of those factors for x like I'm showing you here. So here would be my two solutions. I'd have x equals -5 or x equals -1. So factoring is the first technique, but not all problems can be factored. The next technique is completing the square. So completing the square is a little bit different. So to do this, first you have to have your two x's isolated. So I have x squared and 6x, so I need to move this 5 over to the other side. So I'm going to rewrite this problem as x squared plus 6x equals -5, and then I want to complete the square on this side. So to complete the square, what I do is I first set what my b is equal to. So my b is always connected to my x term, so in this case my b is 6. Then I take half of that, which would be 3, and then I square that, so half b squared, that would be 3 squared, so this would equal 9. Then I add this 9 to each side of this equation. So this becomes x squared plus 6x plus 9, and then this will equal -5 plus 9. Now I factor this side. And to factor this, you will always have x plus whatever your half b is. So this will be x plus 3 is how that side would factor. And then -5 plus 9 is going to equal 4. From here, I use the square root property. So to use the square root property, you take the square root of each side, but this side becomes plus or minus. So then what I'm left with is x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2. And this will allow me to break this up into two cases then. I have the first case, which is x plus 3 equals +2, and I have the second case, which is x plus 3 equals -2. So now I solve this as usual. So I can go ahead and subtract 3 from each side for this one, so this equals x equals -1. Here I can subtract 3 from each side for this one, and I get x equals -5. And hey, that matches the answers that we found for factoring, right? So all of the answers should be the same. It's just a different way of getting there. So obviously you'd probably want to use factoring on this, but this is a really great technique to use if your leading coefficient is already 1 and this is an even term, and this whole thing cannot be actually factored. So this is a quick technique for this. If you don't remember kind of what all those details mean, I totally have a link to how to complete the square in the comments below, so you can always check out that video. The last technique that we have is the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, if you've got the guided notes, I'll write it out one more time. Okay, so here's the actual quadratic formula. So you have to identify what is your a, b, and c in this. So in this case, my a will be 1, my b will be 6, and my c will be 5. So I will plug those into their respective parts of this formula. So let me do that. Now, after you've plugged those in, you use the order of operations to help simplify this. So let me do that next. And now I can break this up into two cases to finish simplifying. So I'll have x equals -6 plus 4 divided by 2. And then I'll also have x equals -6 minus 4 divided by 2. So I get x equals -2 divided by 2. So I have x equals -1 for one solution. And then for the other one, this will be x equals -10 divided by 2. So this will be x equals -5. So now we have found this same solution 3 different ways. But as you can see with using the quadratic formula, this tends to take the absolute longest time to find the solution. So you really only want to use the quadratic formula if you have no other way to really get to the answer. So I think in general you would probably just want to factor this, but you can use more than one technique to hopefully get the same answer. So those are the first 3 techniques, and then just to shout out to the square root property, which I kind of already mentioned. The square root property you tend to use with things that are already in this format. So to use the square root property in this case, you just take the square root of each side, but when you take the square root of the number, it's always going to be plus or minus that. So in this case, what I would be left with is x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 12. So now I have to simplify the square root of 12. So I get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. And then I can just subtract off the 3 to get x equals -3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Now some instructors actually will force you to break this up into 2 parts. So -3 plus 2 times the square root of 3 and -3 minus 2 times the square root of 3. So just make sure that you modify this if you have to do that. So that is just a really quick crash course into the 4 techniques you can use. If you forgot any of those techniques, check out some of the links in the comments to watch other videos. And if you're looking for how to actually choose which technique is strongest, I do also have a video on that. So thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you guys in another video. Catch you later.